Welcome to the ReConnect Application Portal Introduction, Network, and Environmental Webinar. Jessica Hilbrick, that's me, and Travis Sotheby, members of the USDA ReConnect support team, are here to walk you through today's presentation. We will have a live question and answer period at the end, but due to the length of the content, time may be limited. Please submit questions through the chat, and we will post answers in the coming days. Also, as you get started on your application, don't forget you can always send questions through Contact Us on the ReConnect webpage. Before we start, we wanted to give you an overview of what to expect during this webinar. We will walk through getting started, obtaining access credentials, ReConnect account setup, account information, creating your application, including network and environmental sections, available resources, and end with questions and answers. Next week, we will have 2 additional webinars. The first 2 will focus on the financial section of the application, and the other will focus on using the mapping tool within the application system. If you plan on joining us for the mapping webinar, it may be helpful to explore the eligible area map ahead of time at reconnect.usda.gov. So first, getting started. In the 2018 Consolidated Appropriations Act, Congress provided $600 million to the broadband pilot program that we are now calling the ReConnect program. This program is a pilot program offering a unique federal financing option in the form of grants, loans, and combinations thereof to extend broadband service to rural areas. The program focuses on areas that completely lack or have insufficient broadband service. Sufficient access is defined in the statute as 10 megabits per second downstream and 1 megabit per second upstream. If an area has less than 10-1 service, then the area is eligible. The program includes incentives, which are built into the application process, that encourage applicants to focus on farms, businesses, educational facilities, healthcare facilities, and critical community facilities in solution planning. The minimum requirement is to provide 25.3 megabits per second service to rural America. In fiscal year 2019, an additional $550 million was added to the program by Congress. With this additional funding, the 10-1 eligibility service requirement and other requirements of this program may change in future funding opportunity announcements. Before we get started on the application process, I want to tell you what you can apply for. There are 3 products offered through this program: loans, a combination loan and grant, and grants. The loan product has $200 million in available funding, and the maximum award amount for individual projects will be $50 million. The interest rate for these loans will be 2%. Next, the loan grant combination product has $200 million in available funding, split $100 million for grants and $100 million for loans. The maximum award amount for projects in this category will be $50 million, and loan and grant amounts will always be equal. The interest rates for this product will be based on the Treasury rate at the time of the advance. Finally, the grant product also has $200 million in available funding. The maximum award amount for this product will be $25 million, and applicants are required to provide a 25% match. That match can only be in cash. Across all 3 products, there is a minimum speed requirement of 25.3 megabits per second service, and the combination and 100% grant products will be incentivized to provide higher speeds via the scoring criteria. This is a screenshot of the ReConnect website. When you go to reconnect.usda.gov, at the top of the page, you will see a section that says, Now Accepting Rural eConnectivity Pilot Program Applications. Anyone looking to enter the application system should hit Apply Now. First, we will start with obtaining access credentials. In order to access the system, prospective applicants will need to obtain Level 2 eAuthentication or eAuth access credentials. You first start by creating an account via the USDA eAuthentication homepage, which is www.eauth.usda.gov. You can see it in the box at the top of the slide. Applicants will then navigate to a Create an Account link and select Register for a Level 2 account button as seen on the slide. After populating the required information to obtain Level 2 eAuth, the user will be routed to a summary page. Review the information for accuracy and select Submit. An email will be sent to your email address with the additional instructions to complete the process. Once you receive your eAuthentication credentials, navigate to the ReConnect program website using Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or Microsoft Edge. The application system will not work with Internet Explorer. Applicants must download and use one of the 3 browsers listed: Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or Microsoft Edge. Once the login page has rendered, navigate to the top right corner of your browser and select the Login button shown in red. The user will be routed to a login screen as seen in the figure. Clicking the Community eAuth button will route the user to the eAuthentication login. Under the User ID and Password section, enter your eAuth credentials, meaning your user ID and the password you just created. Then click the Login button as shown. Now that the credentials have been obtained, applicants will need to create their ReConnect accounts before preparing applications. The second step to creating an application is to submit an Authorized Representative Request, or ARR. This request ensures that the right people from the applicant's team have the administrator and representative signer certifier roles. More than one person can be assigned to the administrator role, but only one person may be designated as a representative signer certifier. Both roles can interact with the application and connect other users to the applicant's account. However, only the rep sign cert has the authority to provide signatures, authorize certifications, and submit the application. Therefore, the ARR must, at a minimum, identify the person that will be assigned the rep sign cert role. The person in this role must be employed by the applying organization. To verify that the correct people are assigned to these roles, the governing body resolution must be submitted. The instructions on the ReConnect website provide 2 sample resolutions, corporation and LLC. If the applicant is an entity other than a corporation or LLC, then the content in the sample resolutions can be modified to reflect the applicant's legal structure. The screenshot on this slide shows where to find the ARR resolution instructions and samples on the ReConnect website. If you start at reconnect.usda.gov, these instructions will be found under Forms and Resources in the section labeled Application and Award Materials. The document appears first in the list alphabetically. Next, we're going to walk you through the ARR process. Please hold on just a minute as we access the system. To apply for ReConnect funds, you must create an account. This video shows you how to start an account by creating and submitting an Authorized Representative Request, or ARR, in the ReConnect application system. After you've logged into the system using your Level 2 USDA eAuthentication ID, you can use the system's home screen. You'll see a blue navigation bar across the top of the screen which contains the Accounts link. There's also a tile below the navigation bar for Accounts, and you can click either link and click the tile. Next, the Authorized Representative screen appears. click the drop-down box beside Primary Program and choose Telecommunications. Then click the drop-down box beside the subprogram and choose ReConnect. Move down the screen to the Applicant Information section and fill out the legal name of applicant. Fill in the tax identification number and choose the applicant's headquarters state from the drop-down menu. Scroll down the screen to Authorize Representative section. You can only have one representative signer certifier or rep sign cert for your organization, and you can't create an account without a rep sign cert. So first, click Key Contact checkbox to make your rep sign cert as a key contact for your account. Notice that the rep sign cert's first name, last name, and email address have been filled in from their eAuthentication. Fill in their phone number and Level 2 eAuthentication ID. Next, click Security Role and use the drop-down to choose Representative Signer Certifier. You can repeat this process now or add more administrators later. And next, you'll scroll down the screen to the Resolution section. Attach your resolution by clicking the Attach icon and choosing the correct file. A confirmation message appears showing the file name, size, and a delete icon. Then click Submit to submit the request. A confirmation screen appears stating that it could take 2 business days to evaluate your ARR. Then click Done and return to the system's home screen. So now that we just walked through that process, I want to circle back and remind you of some tips for completing this process. First, prepare a governing body resolution in advance that follows the RUS instructions. The legal name stated in the resolution must match the legal name stated in the ARR. The resolution must clearly specify the people in the applicant's organization who can interact with the system as a representative signature certifier, rep sign cert, or administrators. At a minimum, the resolution must contain the name of the representative signer certifier. Remember, the rep sign cert can add other key contacts, including people that will be administrators to the account after the ARR is approved. If the ARR identifies administrators in addition to the rep sign cert, then the administrator will also be able to add key contacts to the account after the ARR is approved. Make a plan for determining the application key players. You may not want everyone having access to your application. And remember, everyone that is anticipated to enter the intake system, not just those listed in the ARR, must have a Level 2 eAuthentication to access the ReConnect system. Only the people identified on the authorized representative request should enter the ReConnect application portal initially. Other individuals must not enter the portal until they receive an email indicating that they may do so. Otherwise, these individuals risk being locked out of the portal. It is the responsibility of the users approved on the ARR to add other key contacts to their account. When the rep sign cert or administrator adds a key contact to an application, the system will automatically send an email notification to the new key contact explaining that they have been linked to the application and assigned a specific role. Only after this notification has been received should these other users enter the portal. If individuals try to access the portal before receiving this email notification, then they will be locked out of the system. Therefore, it is imperative that anyone that is not part of the ARR wait to enter the portal until they have received an email invitation. Once the ARR request has been processed and approved, it's time to enter the account information into the ReConnect application system. To get started, enter and update the account information field by selecting the Accounts Header tab, then the account name hyperlink as shown on the slide. As you can see, there are multiple tabs on the home page which will allow applicants to manage account information, key contacts, documents, and RUS IDs. Then the user should navigate to the Account Information subheader tab to populate the required account information. You may not be able to read the information here, but it is just the general account information required to submit an application, and we have them spelled out on the next slide. A complete list of all the fields may be reviewed in the application guide, which is currently available on the ReConnect website. Here, you can see various data fields applicants will need to provide, including common name for the applicant, Cage and DUNS number, address, borrowing entity type, and under account information, applicants will also need to upload organizational documents, parent company information, affiliate information, subsidiary information, identify key contacts, upload account documents, and provide existing RUS IDs as applicable. Please remember to save your form before proceeding. Now we are ready to create an application. And again, here we're going to take you into the system. Once all account information has been provided, applicants should then navigate to the application's homepage by selecting the account name hyperlink on the authorizations page. To create a new application, select certification as shown. Users will then be prompted to select the funding type, which are 100% grant, 50/50 loan grant, or 100% grant, and the application year. Once the user selects the funding type and application year, a blank application will be created. Applicants should be aware that this selection cannot be edited later down the application preparation process. Multiple applications may be activated simultaneously. However, the type of application cannot be changed after it has been created. For example, you will not be able to transfer information entered in a 100% grant application to a 50/50 loan grant application. The application year will automatically default to the current calendar year, in this case, 2019. Please remember, only one application may be submitted per entity under this funding opportunity announcement. We are now ready to develop the application. Please note, the gold icons at the top of the screen have been added for use in this presentation to help better understand what section we are in. Applicants will not see these icons in the actual application system. The portal does not require completion of each layer or tab in sequence, but changes within layers or tabs can ripple throughout the application. That ripple may mean the applicant will have to adjust finances to meet newly proposed facilities. That ripple could also affect overall eligibility or feasibility. While a specific order is not required, the system is designed to move from left to right and top to bottom within subsections. On the slide, you can see the various application sections and subsections that must be completed and validated in order to successfully submit your application for review. Depending on your preferred funding category, awardee type, project and service area characteristics, the application will automatically filter out sections that are not required or applicable. Applicants should also be aware that specific answers to various application components, such as the availability and use of unadvanced prior loan funds, or UPLF, for the project will have downstream effects prompting the applicant to prepare a UPLF capital investment workbook, for example. I will now walk you through the entire home screen before Travis dives into the environmental section. The user interface for the application system has been designed to encourage applicants to develop each section in sequential order, from left to right and top down. Starting with the project section, here applicants will complete project information, required level of NEPA review, and upload project documents. Followed by the service area section. Here, applicants will draw their service area polygons. Then, the network section. Here, applicants will provide their network design, identify key build-out timeline and project milestones, prepare capital investment workbooks and schedules, and upload and manage network documents. After the service area and network sections have been completed, applicants should move to the financial section. Here, applicants will need to complete all underlying financial sections shown on the slide. Highlighting a few are the financial statements, revenue schedules, and existing amortization schedules for other sources of debt, just to name a few. After financials have been completed, applicants should complete the environmental section, during which you will prepare construction maps identifying and describing sites and routes, complete EQs, and upload environmental documents. Don't forget, the EQs are available outside of the application, and you can view them now on the ReConnect website. Please note, this case example is for a 100% loan application, but we have added the evaluation criteria section in for reference for those applicants who will be applying for the competitive 100% grant and 50/50 loan grant combination products. Applicants should then upload required licenses and agreements, such as indispensable right of use agreements. Followed by the certification section, where you can check self-certification boxes, such as self-certifying that you aren't delinquent on any federal debt obligations. Before submitting, applicants can manage all uploaded documents as shown on this slide. Lastly, applicants will have the ability to review their summary and submit their applications. I will now turn it over to Travis Featherby for the remainder of the presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. We will now transition into the project section of the application system. First, applicants should begin by populating general project details, starting with the free-form text response describing the project. The radio button yes/no questions here yield downstream effects on the application, such as an applicant's plan to invest any funds in any non-funded service areas. Here you can see the project details applicants should be prepared to articulate for USDA's review. These include project description, technology type, whether it is fiber to the premise, hybrid fiber coax, licensed or unlicensed fixed wireless, or a different technology type that applicants will have to specify with a description. You may select more than one technology type. Use of unadvanced prior loan funds, planning to invest funds into non-funded service areas, is the applicant requesting SUDA consideration, will ReConnect funds be used for an acquisition, is the applicant proposing service on tribal lands, supplemental materials, upload, including funding request resolution and state-funded areas certification and map of service area. Applicants will then be prompted to provide the required executive summaries in free-form text boxes. Note, these responses can be saved and revised prior to submission. The slide shown lists all required executive summary responses. Those are description of existing operations, discuss about key management, description of company workforce, description of interactions between any parent, affiliate, or subsidiary operation, and description of the proposed project. RD has identified classes of actions and the level of environmental review required for applicant proposal and agency actions in subparts B, categorical exclusions, subpart C, environmental assessment, and subpart D, environmental impact statement. Applicants will need to determine whether an EIS and EA are required for the proposed project. Applicants must reply yes or no to the two questions as shown on the screen. Those two questions are, is the proposed action one that rural development has identified as requiring an environmental impact statement, otherwise known as EIS, or has an EIS been prepared due to the involvement of another federal agency? Is the proposed action one that rural development has identified as requiring an environmental assessment, otherwise known as EA, or has an EA been prepared due to the involvement of another federal agency? If the applicants select yes to either of the above questions, an EIS or EA is required. Applicants must contact Rural Utilities Service at ReConnect@usda.gov for guidance. Applicants will also have to answer if RUS has been contacted. Remember, applicants must fill out this section prior to starting the rest of the application because it carries downstream effects throughout the application. As mentioned, if an EIS or EA is required for upload, applicants will have to upload the appropriate document in which is shown on the screen. Under the project section, applicants may also upload additional project documents as required. Users will be prompted to identify the document type and draft a brief description prior to uploading the document. Please ensure that the accuracy of the document type and description before uploading the files. Please note that the documents must be uploaded individually. For example, if an applicant has 5 project documents to upload, they must upload each document individually. After the project information and uploads have been added to the application, users will see a prompt indicating they have completed the project section of the application. Users should then continue to the service area section. This section of the application will be covered in greater detail in next week's mapping webinar on Thursday, May 2nd. However, we do want to emphasize the importance of mapping your service areas before proceeding with the rest of the application. Applicants must map all components of their projects, including proposed service areas and non-funded service areas. Once service area or areas have been mapped, applicants should prepare and complete the network section of the application, starting with the network design subsection. Here, applicants will provide the brief description of technologies to be deployed for the project, the proposed, or if applicable, existing network, and upload the required network design diagrams and network design PE certification. This slide contains the complete list of network fields shown in the figure on the previous slide. They are description of the proposed technology that will be used to deliver broadband service, description of the applicant's existing network, if applicable, description of the applicant's proposed network, and network uploads including the network design, network diagram, and network design PE certification. Please be sure to save your work before proceeding. As with other USDA infrastructure investment programs, the agency is particularly interested in monitoring an applicant's adherence to the proposed build-out schedule and timeline. As such, applicants will be prompted to identify and describe key milestones throughout the build-out period. For each calendar year, applicants will be prompted to identify and describe the milestones via the user form prompts shown on the slide. Remember, this is a case example of a sample application, which means that you will see annual milestones for wired solutions and quarterly for wireless solutions. Now that the network design and build-out milestones have been added to the application, it is time to complete the capital investment workbook and schedule. Even though these fall under the network tab of the application portal, we will be covering these in more detail next week during the application portal financial webinar. The final subsection is for the applicant to upload all required and any optional supporting network design files. The next section we will cover is the environmental section. We will cover site and route mapping along with environmental questionnaires. Here, applicants will prepare construction maps detailing sites and routes associated with each service area identified. The polygons drawn earlier in the application in the service areas will render on the construction map, enabling the user to draw the project sites and routes for each proposed service area. Detailed guidance on the various ReConnect and USDA mapping tools will be offered in the mapping webinar on Thursday, May 2nd. For each site and route, applicants will need to prepare detailed descriptions and identify the project assets associated with each site and route in the service area. I will now walk you through a case example live to demonstrate requirements in describing a site and site asset creation and description. Here you can see site descriptions and route descriptions. Please note, under site descriptions, there is a name for application walkthrough site example. You would go to edit description. You will see a question that pops up that is the proposed site located on or does it cross tribal lands as identified in the tribal lands layer of the construction map. Only answer yes if the American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian area census code for that area falls within 0000-4990. You can answer yes or no to this question. If you answer yes, you can also then go towards the next question, which is the proposed site located on or does it cross federally managed lands as identified in the formally classified lands layer of the construction map? You can also select yes or no. To add a new asset, you go down to the bottom of the screen, create Add and Continue. For this example, I will name it Tower 1. The drop-down, you can select tower, building, access road, or parking lot. For this example, we will use tower, and then hit add and continue. Once the screen has rendered, you will see a question that asks, is it an existing tower or a tower to be constructed? You will select either existing or to be constructed. In this case, we will select to be constructed. You will then be asked to select the type of tower to be constructed. You can see the 4 different types listed there. We will pick guide tower. You will see another set of questions that pop up for length, width, and depth. Once completed, you will have to answer is the land or this tower/pole currently owned by the applicant, leased, or to be purchased. We will pick owned for this example. Then you will have to answer if a FCC license is required for this tower or pole. We will pick yes. You will have to answer what is the height of this tower, pole in feet. Then, is the applicant proposing to install any network and access equipment on this tower or pole? If you select yes, you will see that you have the option to select multiple antennas, batteries/UPS, or rack-mounted equipment. You are then asked if you are co-locating, upgrading, or installing a new antenna. If you select co-locating, you will have to confirm if an FCC license is required for any of the equipment. If you select yes, the applicant proposing to install a generator at this tower or pole will be asked. If you select no, this will be the end and you hit save and continue. However, we will hit yes. It will ask you the number of generators to be installed. You'll then see it prompts you to select if it's going to be a backup generator or primary generator. Based on the selection of backup generator, you'll have to list the installation method for the generators. And then as you can see, if you select poured concrete, you will have length, width, and depth to fill out. You can also select either or. And then that will complete the addition of that asset. You will hit save and continue, and then you will see the screen that says your asset has been saved. Click return to site below to return. Please note that all site and route descriptions must be complete prior to moving on to the environmental questionnaires section. Once the project sites and routes and underlying assets have been identified, applicants should continue by preparing the environmental questionnaires. Selecting the blue boxes will route the user to fillable PDFs. Applicants must download the PDFs in order to complete them. EQs will be required for each site and route for each service area. Once the EQs have been completed, users can save and upload them to the application system. Please note, EQs are now available on the ReConnect website under the Forms and Resources section. The application system will also allow applicants to review official endangered species lists based on the service area polygons drawn for each site and route. Finally, applicants can upload all required and additional supporting environmental documents before moving to the certification section of the application. Some additional resources provided on this slide are workshops, which are the experts in detailed application information. There will be a list of the final 2 workshops on the ReConnect webpage. RD also plans to continue facilitating webinars addressing frequently asked questions and specific aspects of the application. Materials for the financial, application basics, and engineering, application basics and engineering are currently available on the ReConnect website. If you are interested in any of the events I have discussed, the schedule for the technical assistance webinars and workshops can be found on the events page of the ReConnect website. The ReConnect website is also a great resource. It contains program information, fact sheets, and technical assistance materials that can be used when developing applications. Resources and information on the site will be updated and added as we approach the application windows. Also on the ReConnect website, you can find the application guide. Finally, I would like to mention the USDA is maintaining a help desk to respond to questions submitted via the ReConnect website. If you have a question after you leave today, please be sure to use the Contact Us resource on the ReConnect website to get your questions answered.
So with that, we're going to move into some live questions and answers. We also have Ryan Corsi, part of the USDA staff, here to help us answer questions from today's webinar.
So the first question is, if you have not received a signed ARR or authorized representative request due to scheduling problems with the board, etc., is there any way to start working on an application through the portal? Unfortunately, the answer here is no. We require that the company or the applicant submits that signed ARR, which requires those board resolutions prior to entering the system, prior to working on the application in the system. For an applicant that is a municipality, can the representative signature certifier be an appointed citizen instead of an employee? For this security role, because it's a particularly important role, you're able to sign all the certifications and submit the application. You can sign certifications and submit the application. It's very important that the representative signed cert is an employee. So an appointed citizen would not be an appropriate person for that security role. How long is the application process expected to take in staff hours? This would be dependent on the applicant and how familiar the applicant is already with RUS programs. However, for the ReConnect program as a pilot program, it's estimated to take between 200 and 270 hours. It is an extensive application, and we will be reviewing and revisiting how many hours it does take after the ReConnect this window closes. What is the URL of the login page? reconnect.usda.gov does not have the login button you showed in your slides. Perhaps my team here can assist with that question. They're checking that URL just to be sure.
So to log into the website, you should go to reconnect.usda.gov. At the top of the web page, not looking for a specific URL, you should look for Now Accepting Rural E-Connectivity Pilot Program Applications and click the button that says Apply Now. This will take you to usda.gov/reconnect/how-to-apply, and that'll take you to the login for the system.
And perhaps we could also enter that into the chat box so that people can have that other URL.
Yes, we can enter that URL into the system. into the chat box.
Okay. The next question is, what is SUTA consideration? So SUTA, S-U-T-A, stands for Substantially Underserved Trust Areas. You can also find the description about SUTA in the regulations at 7 CFR, Part 1700, Subpart D. So to provide some additional assistance for applicants that plan to serve or are applying to serve substantially underserved trust areas, you're able to request certain consideration. For the purposes of this FOA, or for this ReConnect round, only the following discretionary provisions may be granted. And there's a list of considerations that are applicable under SUTA. There are about 5. So for ReConnect under this FOA, only 3 apply, and I'll just name those now. For the grant loan combinations, the administrator may allow the interest rate to be as low as 2%, independent of the Treasury rate at the time of advance. The administrator may grant extended loan repayment terms, or the administrator may grant priority status to these projects. So you can review that regulation. It lists out all of those 3 considerations, and then in order to be considered for SUTA, you have to submit a written request identifying which consideration you would like, and the details of that written request are also in the regulation at 7 CFR, Part 1700, Subpart D.
We got another question related to next week's webinars. The event schedule on the webpage does not currently have listed the registration link for next week's webinars, but please check back at reconnect.usda.gov under events to register for those webinars. The first one will be on Tuesday, April 30th, and it will cover starting your application and the financial sections of the application. And on Thursday, May 2nd, we're going to have another webinar that walks you through the mapping tool in the application. So we just want to acknowledge that those registration links are not up yet, but they will be up soon, and you should be expecting those webinars in the afternoon next week on Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay, can you please define existing network? So in this application, you are requesting ReConnect funds to improve or to build infrastructure to provide broadband service in a specific area. So that would be considered a new network. However, for applicants that already have or own infrastructure that provides broadband service, that would be considered the existing network. And the reason why we need to understand the existing network as well as the new network is that impacts your financials. We want to have the whole picture of your financials so that we can understand financial feasibility during the application review.
We have through the chat is, what is a PE certification? You can find a sample PE certification on the ReConnect website under Forms and Resources. This form must be signed by a licensed engineer. It approves your network design, and this signature from the engineer certifies that your network design is capable of providing 25.3 megabits per second service to every premises in the proposed service area. But please go back to the ReConnect website under Forms and Resources to check the sample form.
In addition to that, if your proposed funded service area is across multiple states, you have to have just a representative of PE from one of those states to sign the form.
So we have another question. Will we be able to upload construction routes and sites via shapefile? Yes. you will be able to upload construction sites and routes in shapefile. However, we will cover this in more depth next week during mapping. You will need to differentiate between different types of sites and routes in that upload multiple times. As Travis walked us through today, there are a number of questions that associate with specific types of sites or routes or assets, and thus you will not be able to answer those questions if everything is combined into one file.
The application guide also details the file type requirements and sizes for those shapefiles.
A follow-up question is if you will have to answer all of those questions manually. Yes, you will have to answer the questions manually in the site descriptions, but you will be able to upload the GIS files for where those sites and routes are.
Okay, so another question, do you have an example of a funding request resolution? I'm going to assume here that what you are meaning is the board resolution, which is required in the ARR submission. So we have a couple examples available in the instructions for submitting a resolution as part of the ARR. You can find that by going to the ReConnect website, clicking Apply Now, and then if you scroll down on the screen, there's a link under option 1 for instructions, and in that document, there are 2 examples of board resolutions, one for an LLC, another for a corporation. And as was mentioned during the webinar, these resolutions can be modified to reflect the applicant's legal structure.
I have a question about if an application can be started, then deleted, then restarted. You may have as many active applications in the system as you would like. However, you are not able to transfer information from one application to another. This is also the case if you are changing funding types between applications. As you saw in our screen, we had couple different examples. We are not able to transfer information from the 100% loan to a 50-50 combo. So you can start and restart an application, but you will not be able to transfer information from one draft application to another.
And you will only be able to submit one application.
So there was a question about the times of the webinars. You had mentioned 2 webinars coming up next week. Are these times already set?
Yes. The webinars next week will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and they will be on Tuesday and Thursday and will run for 1 hour.
And similar to this webinar, you will have to register to be able to view the webinar.
There was a question about the eligible entities for the loan-only product. So the eligible entities are the same for the grant, the loan grant combination, and for the loan-only. Those can be found in the FOA, and I'll just read those off right now just so that everyone is aware. So states, local governments, a territory or possession of the United States, an Indian tribe, nonprofit entities, for-profit corporations, limited liability companies, and cooperative or mutual organizations are eligible to apply to any of the 3 products.
We had a follow-up question. Is there only one application allowed per entity? Yes. Only one application per entity under this FOA. That means an organization has to decide in advance if they are going to apply for the 100% grant, 50-50 loan grant, or 100% loan products, and you can only submit one application under this FOA. So with that, we are coming to the end time of our webinar. Please submit any additional questions through the chat box. We are collecting the chat questions, and we do expect to post answers to those within a few days. We will leave that open for just a few more minutes before ending the connection.